On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, we're one Raptors bucket away from feeling pretty good on today's show. They win over the Kings, things are back on track. Instead, we're here to contemplate existentially about the future of the team with Jamar Hinds of Raptors Republic. Thanks so much for hanging. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1302 of Locked On Raptors for Thursday, December the 15th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. Been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all of my work over on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the podcast for free on your favorite podcast apps. And we are, of course, on YouTube. You can go hit the big fat red subscribe button. You can't miss it to support the show and help us push towards 3,000 subs over there on the tube. All right, on today's show, the Raptors continue to freefall their third straight loss against the Sacramento Kings, 124-123, in which the hard truth that 3 is worth more than 2 really came to bear as the Raptors hit 6 3-pointers over the course of an entire NBA game in the year of our Lord 2022. As the Kings pour in 17 of 46. And despite some good stuff from Fred VanVleet, Scottie Barnes, which we'll get to later on, we're sitting here picking up the pieces. 13 and 15 the Raptors sit. And we're going to dive into our biggest takeaways here with our pal Jamar Hinds from Raptors Republic. Jamar, what's going on, man?
I'm pretty good. You guys get ready. Apparently, Sean has a rant waiting. So he told me about this already. So I don't know what I'm going to say, but we'll see.
I feel like maybe I built it up too much. I kind of just tweeted it, all of my thoughts last night. I'll just repurpose them for the podcast, because that's what you do. But yeah, let's dive into sort of the big picture, sort of ramifications of this game. We'll dig into the individual performances and stuff we liked and didn't like, and the good, the bad, and the later on. But for me, Jamar, just coming out of this game, I feel like last night was very illuminating as to the real sort of core issues going on with the Raptors. We've talked a lot in recent episodes about, things that Nick Nurse could be doing differently, things that, that the sort of schematic stuff, the struggles of individual players and how they're all kind of, it's death by a million little cuts for this Raptors team. But I feel like last night against the Kings, you go 6 of 21 from 3. You continue to be probably the worst three-point shooting team in the league. The Lakers and Knicks will give you a run for your money, but right now the Raptors, I think, hold that very unfavorable distinction. You also get absolutely crushed on the defensive glass, where you don't really have any rim protection to speak of out there against Domantas Sabonis and the parade of quick guards getting to the rim and getting blow-bys. And to me, this game, Jamar, kind of illuminated exactly the holes that the front office's team-building plan have kind of created by design. And I don't think they've missed the three-point shooting and center play that they seemingly have punted on in the name of athletes and defense and 6'9" dudes quite as clearly as they did against the Kings last night. And so I'm sitting here, you can get mad at Nick Nurse, you can get mad at all the guys, do whatever you want. To me, the issue at its core is the roster doesn't have the players to supplement the good players already on the roster. And the internal development bet, which was, hey, Precious Achiuwa is going to shoot like he did at the end of last season. Chris Boucher is probably going to fall somewhere between the Tampa season and last year in terms of his three-point percentage. You're probably going to get at least one of Delano Banton or Justin Champagnie or Malachi Flynn, one of these back-end young guys, to pop. None of those things have happened. Otto Porter Jr.'s barely played. You haven't gotten his shooting. And you're sitting there kind of, if you're the front office, the bet for internal development hasn't paid off. And now as we sit here on December 15th, as like 90% of the league can now be traded, it feels as though this is kind of on the front office to figure out. And they have the information now through 28 games that there's just not enough to supplement the good players on the team. What say you, Jamar, that this game kind of illuminated that it's now kind of in the front office's corner to figure this thing out?
I agree with you on the sense that this game showed a lot of the Raptors' weaknesses. For example, you already mentioned the 3-point shooting. Over the last month, the Raptors are shooting around 28%. So that is actually the worst 3-point shooting team in the league. I mean, they've been shooting so bad from three. Now they're not even really trying to shoot threes because, I mean, like I don't look at the numbers really, but I'm pretty sure 21 threes is probably the least they've attempted all season.
It's not a
Because
lot. It's
yeah,
like 2008 numbers, pretty much.
exactly. Because they're
Yeah.
they're 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 not making them. Um, Also, you have the lack of a true center. You have Domantas Sabonis grab 20 boards on you guys, and a lot of that is over like the leaving shooters open. They did that a lot. A lot of that is overcompensation on drives, like that defensive system, and then that leaves the corner threes open. And okay, they miss a corner three, then they grab the offensive board, then they kick it out, maybe shoot another open three. Like the Kings made 17 threes, and it
Mhm.
could have easily been over 20 because they
Oh
only
man, yeah,
they only shot 37%.
yeah.
They missed a lot of open threes. So it
A
could
lot
it
of pop outs too, like 3 or 4, just like in and out.
yeah, exactly. So it could have been even more. And then, we've known that, the depth is an issue. So yeah, it just looked like if your top guys are not on it like every game, and Pascal had his rare off game yesterday,
Hmm.
yeah, you could totally see the glaring issues there. So um like you said, this is an interesting time of the year now with
Hmm.
all the contracts and whatnot. Don't know what the front office will do. I don't know if they're waiting for more games to see if certain guys like a OG and a Otto Porter come back or a Precious come back and evaluate the team more. Then I don't know if they're
Hmm.
waiting for that, or I don't know if they're thinking of something now. That's just something we'll have to see. But fans are getting pretty impatient over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of it is warranted. So, I mean,
Hmm.
they're watching this team every day. They know what the issues are, and it just seems like the same thing is playing out over and over again. And I know a big argument is okay. Well, the Raptors started 14 and 17 last year, and they ended up 48 and 34, but it did you would think that that's not the same trajectory. You would think
Hmm.
that this was a year where they were trying to make a step up from that, because we already know how that road ends. It's okay, we get in the playoffs and then we lose to one of these more top tier elite teams in the Eastern Conference, right?
Hmm.
And the way the Raptors are going right now, you know they may make the play in, and then you don't know what's going to happen. So you thought the ceiling was raised a little bit higher from last year. So
Hmm.
that's why fans are a little bit concerned. They don't want to repeat last year. They wanted to see the team do better. So
Yeah.
we're gonna see. It's still a long season, but there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
For sure. And look, I think the front office was more than justified to bet on internal development being the vessel by which they took that step everybody was hoping for, right? Like the way that season last year progressed, how could you not get kind of Precious Achua pilled? How could you not think that there was going to be some sort of meteoric rise from Scottie Barnes based on what he did in year one? And like, it's just taking longer than I think they anticipated. And I would bet that if they just stayed this course and, kept the roster as is, hope for some health, things will probably end up pretty all right. And, maybe not the sort of big leap that you were hoping for based on the overachievement of last year, but also, I mean, they overachieved last year. That should be
Yeah,
agreed upon.
that's
And I
true.
don't know how fair it is to be like, well, you got to overachieve every year. Like, that's a pretty high bar to set. And if they end up, kind of steadying out here, finishing with 45 wins and make no moves, that will be deemed as a failure. But I think, it'll be far more, dependent on what you see from the individual players themselves as to whether or not it was a step forward type of season. That said, it was justified to bet on the development. The development hasn't happened, or not, nearly enough to sustain the positive step forward. So you got to supplement it now. And I do think the front office deserves the benefit of the doubt here. They have done a very good job for a very long time of making the moves that are needed when they're needed. You think all the way back, Serge Ibaka, PJ Tucker, those were wonderful levers to pull that, if not for LeBron James, probably would have borne a lot more fruit. The Kawhi deal, they are very good at making the deals when the information suggests that there's a deal that needs to be made. So I'm going to give them the couple of months here before the deadline, before really passing any judgment. But if we get to the deadline and the front office hasn't done anything and things are still, glaring in terms of the big holes on the team, then I think, point your criticism all you want. But it does to me still feel like the concept of patience just doesn't work in the minds of Raptors fans and NBA fans. And the front office operates with patience. That's their whole MO. And I feel like maybe you have to sort of realign and just kind of grapple with the fact that they're not going to be fixed today, but there's plenty of time here, plenty of runway before the deadline for them to do something. And now I do think it's firmly in the hands of the front office to go and supplement the roster. If they feel like, they also can go into next season and say, hey, that's when the development's really going to kick in, that's a fine way to go about it, I suppose. But I do feel like that wastes a year of prime Pascal Siakam, which is not a thing you want to do. Exactly. Pascal's too good right now. OG's gotten too good to just punt on this season. And I think it's got to be about adding and supplementing the core and giving these guys the pieces that they just haven't had in a long time when it comes to other players who affect winning basketball. It's just the team building concept. I think there's a lot to it. I think it's a smart idea to have a lot of 6'9" guys who are skilled, but at some point you also have to have guys who do the things that have traditionally been successful in basketball, which is be tall, protect the rim, shoot threes. It's maybe kind of simple. I guess it's a matter of finding those guys, which I'm sure we will dive into a lot in the coming weeks and months. Any last notes on the sort of big picture stuff here, Jamar, before we dive into the nitty gritty of this game?
Well, I just remember a couple years ago when the Raptors were making all their aggressive moves to get Kawhi and get Marc Gasol, and the Celtics that the season prior, the 2018 season, had, overachieved. They damn near got to the finals. And then it's like they were the ones were being looked at. It's like, okay, you have all these assets, Danny Ainge. You didn't really make any moves. How come you didn't make a move like the Raptors did? Like you could have gotten Kawhi and stuff like that. And now it's funny. It's funny because it feels like the script is flipped a little bit. And obviously, Boston's a lot further ahead on their trajectory than the Raptors are. Of course, I mean, like Malcolm Brogdon said it himself, but it's like they've made these little subtle moves over the last few years to improve, including Brogdon. Brogdon was one of the moves, getting Horford back and stuff like that. And now it's like we're looking at the Celtics like, okay, how come we can't make a little move to improve our roster and stuff like that? So I just find it funny.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's also an argument for being patient, right? And like realizing, all right, you've got a core right now of Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Scottie Barnes. Those three guys, you can go to war with those dudes. It's supplementing them and filling out the roster around them. And maybe that means a tough decision comes with Fred VanVleet or Gary Trent Jr. at some point here before the deadline. I tend to think the Fred thing is more of a summer problem. But either way, that there's a good core here. There's a top 15 player, an all NBA guy sitting right there in the prime of at the peak of his powers. OG is on the way up. Scottie, despite the struggles, still has a ridiculous upside. Those three guys you go to war with, and if you're just patient and kind of let things, materialize around them, you make the moves that are there when they're there. There's still plenty of reason to be optimistic about the long-term future of this team. It's just this year feels like it might be a bit of a waste if they don't go and supplement with guys who can sort of fill the very glaring holes that, again, I think last night's game illuminated more than any other game so far.
Yeah. And force Nurse to play more than 8 guys in big games.
Yeah. We're going to come back on the other side, and it wasn't all doom and gloom. We got some nice performances last night from Fred VanVleet and Scottie Barnes in particular. We'll get to that in just 1 second here. Before we do that, however, got to tell you about ExpressVPN. So we all know how ExpressVPN protects your privacy and security online, right? But here's something you might not know. You can also use ExpressVPN to unlock movies and shows that are only available in other countries. Maybe you've run out of stuff to watch on Canadian Netflix. Probably pretty easy to do that. This is going to change your world. ExpressVPN allows you to binge whatever you want in whatever country it might be, because ExpressVPN lets you control where you want sites to think you're located. So you can choose from almost 100 different countries, and imagine the Netflix libraries you can go through. Imagine what you can watch on the BBC One player. I love British television shows. Can't get enough. I'm really enjoying Slow Horses right now, for example. That one's available on Apple TV. That's no problem. But there's plenty of other great British shows you could only watch if you got that BBC iPlayer. So go and get yourself ExpressVPN and watch the shows you want to watch. Maybe you don't want to watch the typical commentary for the World Cup final on Sunday that you'll typically have to see. Maybe you want to see what the broadcast is going to be in France, for example. Watch it in French as France plays for the World Cup title. You can go and do that with ExpressVPN. So if you want to get access to hundreds of new shows, go to expressvpn.com/lockedon right now. You can get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/lockedon, expressvpn.com/lockedon. Today's show is also brought to you by the NHTSA and this very important message. You're hanging out with some friends, you're putting back a few drinks, a few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby, you can make it home okay, it's no big deal. Wrong. What are the odds you get pulled over anyway, you say? Even so, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen is you could lose your job, total your car, even kill someone. Everyone knows the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, we continue on here with Jamar Hinds of Raptors Republic. Let's dig into the individual performances in this Kings game, Jamar. Some beacons of hope and light for a couple of guys who have been struggling. Let's talk about Fred VanVleet. 13 to 25 last night. He still goes 2 of 8 from 3, misses the big one at the buzzer. Obviously, that's going to hold the headlines, but 39, 8, 5 assists, 4 steals, a block, 11 of 11 at the line, 5 of which came on the heels of the Mike Brown freakout, which I think was very justified for Mike Brown. Go Mike Brown. He goes, 11 of 17 from 2-point range. That's a really nice indicator for him. What were your thoughts on Fred VanVleet's bounce-back performance? A real shame it doesn't come in a winning effort, but I think maybe some of the fears that Fred VanVleet is just dead and broken and not a good basketball player anymore kind of eased, I would say, with this performance, no?
Well, when you say 4 steals in a block, is it really 5 steals, or like how does that work?
Probably, yeah.
So, regarding Fred, this was actually his second highest scoring game.
Yeah.
Because he's never had one in the end in the 40s.
Yeah.
It's been 54, and then they're all in the 30s. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. So yeah, this was his second highest scoring game, and he did it in a way that he doesn't normally do it. Because normally when Fred goes over 30 points, you're thinking like 4, 5, 6, 7 threes, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, he only went 2 for 8 because this shot right now is still hit or miss. So instead, Fred was going downhill a lot. I have never seen Fred go downhill this much and finish. Because you see Fred, go into trees and just throw something up and it doesn't go in. But today he was finishing. I mean, yesterday he was finishing them and getting fouls. Double-digit free throws. That's another thing that Fred doesn't normally do. Is his 5th highest free throw attempts. So yeah, and then a couple of them pissed off the Kings, like the one where he just barreled into somebody, and then De'Aaron Fox gets the technical. Mike Brown goes nuts. I like Mike Brown. He's real. I like the energy. Yeah, I like the energy Mike Brown's brought for the Kings this season. Even the I think what was it, the preseason video where he was like he ran across the practice court, like showing them how they're supposed to get back on defense. I feel like Mike Brown got a bad rap during his tenure with LeBron, and people just thought he was a crappy coach. But he's really doing things for the Kings, so I'm rooting for him. But yeah, back to Fred. So him going downhill, drawing a bunch of fouls, and keeping the Raptors in the game. At the end, the 3-point shot that he missed at the end of the game, It's funny when I saw the play, it's not the same play in terms of where, the screens were set and the execution of it, but that play reminded me so much of remember Reggie Miller's shot against the Bulls where he comes in, he does a little push off, then he basically shot from the exact same spot, got a good look, and it goes in. It's like that play looked really similar. It made me kind of laugh. I had to like go back and watch it too. For the Reggie's one was set a little higher, and he went around the screen where Fred went under it. But it was just funny how similar that was. But yeah, hopefully Fred can string these together because he had a really good game against the Mavs a couple weeks ago, and then he went into a massive rut. So with Fred, it's just a matter of consistency, being able to string together performances like this. And the Kings are a perfect team to go downhill against because they're the second worst team in terms of blocks per game.
Yeah, there's no rim protection.
Yeah, there's no rim protection. Yeah. I mean, they start wing players at like power forward, like Harrison Barnes or Keegan Murray, and then they have Sabonis in the middle, who's not a shot blocker. So if there was any team to go driving like hell down, it was this team. So it was good to see Fred take advantage of that.
Yeah, like you probably want to see more than just a game against the Kings where he looks that dynamic getting downhill to see if it's a trend.
And that's where the consistency's got to kick in.
100%. But I will say, like, a positive indicator for me is like his burst looked on point last night. Like he was blowing by dudes. Like he hasn't been doing that all the time this year.
Right.
Defensively, still getting his ass blown by on the other end, and like that's a problem for the entire team right now. And there was a time last night where Scottie Barnes got blown by playing zone, which feels like it shouldn't happen ever. But yeah, I think you have to be encouraged by this game by Fred. Obviously, the three's got to fall, and that. I still feel like we're waiting for the sort of dam to open at some point here with Fred. But like take the positive gains when you can get them, I suppose. And that applies to Scottie Barnes as well. 27, 7, and 10 for him, 10 of 16 overall, 2 of 3 from deep, a couple of really nice in rhythm catch and shoot threes for him. He has the late turnover, sort of getting a little overzealous. That probably cost the Raptors a chance to win the game. That's a bummer for sure. He's had a couple of those late game gaffes. To me, that's just, it's second year player stuff, and I don't know how much it's like a damning telling thing as much as it is a once sort of poorly timed mistake or whatever. It also, I think, speaks to the fact that they needed perfection from their best players last night, and needing perfection's a really bad place to put yourself because the margin for error is so thin. Still, I think overall this was a really impressive Scottie game. Super, I think, smart in the way he was probing the defense and kind of waiting for the right moment to throw passes that were turning into assists. What were your thoughts on Scottie's game? Obviously, a couple of high profile, not so great moments. Defensively still becomes, it seems like you're smacking your head against the wall watching him let guys go by him. But overall impressions of Scottie's 27, 10 or 7 and 10 night.
Yeah, the one defensive highlight I really liked, obviously, is when who is it that he blocked? I feel like it was Murray, where he had to chase down block early in the first quarter.
Block the hell out of him.
Fred kind of got in the way. Alvin Williams did a great job of pointing it out, where Fred kind of got in the way, which made him go to the other side of the rim, and then Scottie swatted the hell out of him. But Scottie did a lot of good things, and certainly, getting in that post area. He's really developed that little hook shot to get him a couple buckets there. He made a couple big threes in the fourth that felt like that was going to be just enough for the Raptors, but then obviously 6 versus 17, the Kings just kept making them right back. And yeah, he had the ball in his hands a lot. I felt like this obviously I said earlier, this was a kind of a down game for Pascal. So Pascal was, cool just being off ball and letting Scottie operate. And he was doing a good job of it. The next thing for Scottie is just to take these type of performances on the road because, his home road splits are pretty damning at this point. And, we just came off a Orlando series where Scottie looked invisible for much parts of it. So it's just, bringing that same energy and consistency on the road. For Fred, it's consistency on a performance issue. For Scottie, it's consistency on just like a energy issue, it seems sometimes. Yeah. So, it's just, I just like to see them, string these together. But, yeah, both of them, you couldn't really ask for anything more. And that just, again, illustrates the issue that it feels like the Raptors have to be perfect from their best players at times to pull out these games. Because obviously Pascal wasn't, if you have a normal Pascal game, we win this game, but that didn't happen. And especially when a guy like OG is out, that stresses that even more. It's like the margin for error is really slim.
Yeah, like further to the point I was making off the top about how this game illuminated a lot of stuff about the Raptors, I think it also illuminates that like the problem is not the good players. Yes, Fred needs to be better than he has been for sure. But the track record suggests that he'll figure it out and get back to something resembling a good player. It's that the players around the good players don't offer enough, margin for error, enough cushion for those guys not to be amazing every night. And that's just not a place where you can operate over a course of an 82-game season. Chris Boucher has himself a rough game, has had himself a bit of a rough stretch overall, I would say. Juancho tries his best, but man, does that dude still get his ass blown by pretty much every time. He's great in team defense, not so much in single coverage. Christian Koloko, I have some stuff on him that we'll get to in the good, the bad, and the Like, there's just not enough right now, and that's injury, that's development, and guys not coming along as quickly as you'd like. All of that. We're gonna get into the good, the bad, and the from this game to round things out. Jamar in just one sec. Before we do that, however, gotta tell you about Built Bar, who are making the best tasting protein bars in the game. They're good for you. They taste great. They make it feel like you're cheating, but you're not. You're having something that's loaded with protein, has only about 130 calories on average, which is like half or way more than less than half. Way more than less than half, whatever. There's way less calories in a Built Bar than there is in your typical candy bar, is the point here. They got a lot of amazing flavors, including candy cane brownie. They've got Built Puffs as well right now, the most delicious cloud of decadence you could possibly have. They're marshmallowy, they're protein filled, they're delicious, and you can go and get yourself all sorts of flavors right now just by going to built.com. It's seasonal time. They've got all sorts of holiday flavors available for you. Go find the ones you might like. Also go with their staple flavors. You can't go wrong. Everyone's going to have a Built Bar that is suited to their tastes and preferences. It's a magical wonderful time of year. Of course, go find yourself some Built Bars to make it even more wonderful. Built, you got to try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. That's the promo code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. All right, Jamar, we've reached the good, the bad, and the way we recap all of your Toronto Raptors games with a thing we liked, thing we didn't like, thing that's got us a little interested going forward. Let's begin with the good, shall we? What you got for your good?
Repeating myself a little bit here, but it's just simply Fred's finishing. It's just he finished at a rate I've never seen him finish. I believe 6 of his 13 makes came inside the restricted area. So again, that's a Fred game I've never seen before. So I want to see more of it.
Yeah, this is a weird one because the good for this game is the two things we just talked about in the last segment. But are we allowed to say Scottie had a really great game? I know the couple mistakes were there, but overall, I think he is my good. Yeah, he's my good from this game. The playmaking was pretty incredible. Couple of miscues. He had an attempted bounce pass to Kem Birch in traffic that was pretty ill timed and all of that. But Fred and Scottie really do feel like the two goods from this game. So we can kind of move on to more unsavory matters. Let's go to the bad. I'm going to go first here. For me, Christian Koloko's box outs are real bad right now, Jamar. He's not strong enough to sort of contend with dudes. Sabonis was just kind of moving him out of the way on the interior. And it wasn't just that Christian Koloko was failing to grab defensive rebounds. It was the entire team. There were a lot of just kind of staring around and hoping someone was going to come down with it as it, popped out to Malik Monk for a 3. But I feel like Christian Koloko, in addition to the offensive strides he still needs to make with going up strong. Oh, by the way, 2 nice dunker spot dunks last night. That was cool, but the boxing out, the sort of strength on the interior is just not there right now, and I think, again, kind of speaks to the fact that some sort of rim protection help would be very, very nice for the Raptors to go and try to acquire. Jamar, what was your bad in this game?
Well, all the players. Well, I shouldn't say all the players, but Fred.
All the players,
No, no,
they're
no, no,
all
no,
bad. Get rid of
no,
them all. Rebuild,
no.
I say.
That's not what I meant. I was talking about the podium players after the game. Fred,
Right.
Scottie, and Nurse. They were all asked about how Sacramento kept getting wide open threes, and
Mhm.
obviously Fred was more blunt about it than anybody, as he usually is. Basically saying that they flat out sucked, and it's a look in the mirror thing, go containing your guy individually. But even like we've seen this time and time again where they just pack the paint for no reason, and that's what happened in the fourth. There's I think Monk had a wide open three where I forget who was driving, but it was the one to put them up for good, I believe. And Chris Boucher is just hanging out in the paint, like 15 feet away from his guy for absolutely no reason. There were already three other guys in the paint. And then you had a miscommunication after that where, two guys go to one person in the corner, and then that leaves someone from the wing wide open. So it's just, for me, the three is the most valuable shot in basketball. And it's just mind-boggling to me how open they are so often. Obviously, this is something that it's strategic based. I understand that, but they have to figure out, rotation wise, film wise, and they all talked about having to watch film, afterwards, but just how to, I've seen the Raptors play it better where, they're running at guys at the 3-point line. They may catch it at the 3-point line with a little bit of space, but then by the time, these long 6'9" limbs and everything get there, they don't have the time to shoot it, and they run them off the 3-point line. But that has seemed to disappear over the last little bit, where it's like they catch it and they could do their little free throw routine and, read the serial number.
Wind.
Yeah, read the serial number and all that type of stuff. And that's just not going to work. I mean, Orlando, it was the same way Orlando pulled away in the fourth last game, where they kept leaving Franz Wagner open. And that's how they pulled away, because that guy didn't even have a three before the fourth. And then he had 3 threes in the fourth alone, and they were all pretty much wide open. So it's just, it feels like as the games go on, because remember, the Raptors only allowed 23 points in the first quarter.
They looked really good defensively in the first quarter. Exactly. It was awesome. Yeah,
exactly. And that was the same story for the last game. And then they allowed 101 points over the next 3 quarters, including 36 in the fourth. So it feels like as the game goes on, you just see the cracks open up more and more. And it's just, okay, how do you maintain that first quarter defensive effort all game? Because even Scottie said after the game, it's like we play 2.5 good quarters, and then, everything just falls off. So they just have to find a way to get back to closing out on shooters properly instead of leaving them wide open, and maintaining that same defensive energy throughout the entire game.
Yeah, the inevitability of math really felt like it was hanging over them in this game. Like, they were scoring their twos, doing their thing, but then if you're not capable of also pouring in a bunch of threes to pad your lead and kind of, keep pace, you can't simply be allowing a parade of wide open threes at the other end. And I think, for me, the way they just totally kind of caved in on the defensive rebounding department was a big reason for a lot of those open threes. It was maybe like a little bit different of a recipe from, their typical sort of funnel wide open threes to the right guys, as it were. Either way, though, like the math is like, this team can't afford to get sloppy in the way it contests the math, because the math is pretty stacked against them with the way they're shooting right now. Let's get into the this was a weird Siakam game, right? It felt as though he had just his choice of whichever mismatch he could go and bludgeon, and he did that for the most part. He got to his spots really capably in this one. He just was off on the touch, kind of around the bucket. There was a lot, I think, in terms of just contests coming from weird angles and extra bodies in the fray. And I do really feel like this was the first time we've seen the Raptors' lack of shooting and lack of space at all really affect Siakam this season. And while he got to his spots, he was usually doing so in sort of a thicket of 3 guys. It was very Tampa-like, honestly. It was the first time I think we've seen that sort of Tampa effect of he's just driving headlong into three bodies, and he's good enough to score over them at times, but it just felt like even though those shots felt open from his spots, there was just a little bit more duress, a little bit more in terms of footsteps that he was hearing, and that's what led to a 7 of 19 performance, which, you accept it with how amazing he's been this season, but you can't afford that if you want to win these games, considering the margins they're playing with. And so I do wonder if maybe we start to see teams use what the Kings did last night, which was collapse onto Pascal with crazy aggression. Maybe they start to go a little bit more sort of aggressive in that mode as well, in future games, as it seems like if you give enough pressure to Siakam, the guys around him aren't going to burn you with their three-point shooting, so why not go all out to stop the one guy who seems like he's unstoppable? That's something I'm going to keep an eye on here if the shooting can't come around in at least some way in the coming weeks and months. Jamar, what's your
No, that's a good point of packing the paint in terms of teams can do that defensively, and if Raptors are getting in the way as well, Aaron Baines style, that does affect Pascal a little bit. Although he did miss some bunnies that to me is an anomaly, but
totally.
Yeah, that is a good point to bring up. And when the Raptors are only making 6 threes in the game, you can afford to do that. Especially like missing OG, who's one of their best shooters, who's having a down year shooting himself, as everybody is. But yeah, that definitely hurts. My is I want to see, because this is your punishment for letting Orlando sweep you with that home and home. Now the schedule gets tougher. The next 12 games, 11 of their opponents are over 500. The one that's not is the defending champion Golden State Warriors. Now,
who might not have Steph.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to get into. They may not have Steph. He's going to undergo an MRI, and we'll see what happens with that. That's probably going to suck for whoever got tickets to go to that game. The one time you get to see stuff, it's crazy how these things play out sometimes in the NBA, where it's just like, either the guy's sitting out or the guy gets injured just before you were going to go see him. So, hopefully stuff's all right. But yeah, the Warriors have their own issues. But other than that, there's a lot of teams, and a lot of them in the Eastern Conference that, they were playing Brooklyn again on it. How the hell are we done to schedule Brooklyn before Christmas?
I don't know. I'm glad for it. I'm sick of thinking about the Nets.
I know, but it's weird. The way the schedule is made is just weird. Like you're talking about a division opponent, and January through April, you don't see them at all. You'd think it'd be spaced out a little bit.
Whereas, like, the other side of things too is they don't finish with the Celtics until they play 2 against them in the final week of the season. Like it's very weird. Yeah,
but this going down the stretch. I mean, we're already having these big picture conversations and stuff, and depending, if the Raptors can find their groove, especially with the shooting and, defending shooting, things could go real ugly real quick if they don't find those type of answers. So, the rest of this month for sure is basically a litmus test to see, what can improve and how quickly it can improve. And, hopefully you get a guy like OG back sooner rather than later, although he's going to be evaluated in another week or so. And how that goes. And I'm pretty sure Otto Porter is gone for the foreseeable future. And and there hasn't been any new news on Precious yet. So the depth will not be there. So it's just, how do the Raptors, carve out these wins? They're going to be a grind, but, we're gonna see how this plays out. The schedule is not kind, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if the Raptors wanted to go ahead and trade for some depth pieces today, I'd be cool with that. I don't know if we need the next stretch of games to tell us any more about what this team needs, but yeah, Nets, Warriors, Sixers, Knicks, Cavs, Clippers, Grizzlies, Suns, Pacers, Bucks, Knicks, Blazers. And then you get a couple against the Hornets and then the Hawks to kind of, relax. And once you get into January, but this next stretch, man, it's going to tell us a lot. And, I think the sort of range of outcomes here is they acquit themselves pretty admirably. And it becomes even more clear that it's not about the best players and that it's just about finding those depth pieces. And if they really go off the rails here, then Fred and Gary Trent Jr. become really interesting as far as, do you just move them before the deadline, before the contract situations come to a head? We don't know that yet. I would still err on the side of, I would imagine Fred's going to be more of a summer decision, but we'll see. This next little stretch is a big one. That's a great by you. Jamar, it was a great appearance by you as well. Anything you'd like to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, check out my Twitter handle, Jamar, JamarBH. I just posted a recap of this Kings game on Raptors Republic, highlighting some of the issues that we talked about and some other stuff and, some clips and whatnot. So, definitely check that out. I will be posting a preview of the Nets game tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm always posting a few, articles a week, even some 905 stuff here and there. So, yeah, definitely check that out.
You're doing great stuff, man. Everyone go check out Jamar. Everyone go support Raptors Republic, our pals over there. And we'll round it out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow with Casey Bannerman, noted artist who does a lot of stuff in conjunction with the Toronto Raptors. That's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have a good time with him and try to lighten the mood, I think, as things are as sort of dire as they felt with the Raptors in a very long time. It's weird. It's kind of interesting, honestly, for a team that's been a metronome of good decisions and good play for the last decade. So, don't go anywhere. We'll break it all down as we...
You gotta ask Casey about those new name player awards. I hear he's not a big fan of it.
I can't imagine having an opinion on it, really. Like, who cares? But we'll talk to Casey about that tomorrow. Excited to get him on the show. But until then, thank you so much for tuning in. Go make your second listen of the day. Locked On Sports Today as Pete Bukowski runs through all of the news from around the sports world in 22 neat and tidy minutes each and every morning. Go check it out. And with that, we'll talk to you on Friday, another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.